All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel, and we've got a guest on with us today. We got Reis. Now, I brought Reis on because I really want to have a chat to him. I want to try and make this fortnightly, or weekly, or monthly, or whatever. But I want to keep on bringing him on because I think he's got some great opinions every now and then.
I do. You're right. They're all good. I've never had a bad one.
Yeah, so I just want to bring him on because I think it's actually worth having a little discussion before All-Stars. And, if we can maybe, squeeze ourselves in and amongst his busy schedule during FNCS, we can maybe have a chat about that while that's going on as well. So this, hopefully a recurring series on my channel here. And if obviously, if you don't already follow Reis, make sure you do. But I think we should start by having a chat about the solo meta at the moment going into All-Stars. Just generally, what is your vibe on it? Do you like it? Do you not like it? How are you feeling?
I mean, where there are so many different things to go down the route when you ask the question on what we can look at in the meta.
Okay.
I mean, the easiest to look at. I mean, we'll break it down. You were about to go further, right?
So,
because you can go mobility. You can go.
Let's start with mobility. Yeah. Okay. Let's start with mobility because that's the one that everyone thinks about, right? They think about what's the mobility meta going into any sort of tournament that we've got. I am not a fan of launch pads. I never have been. I think they're a terrible movement item. I think they make people play poorly, and especially for solos, I think you need a second movement item. That's my opinion. I think if you're going to have launch pads, you need a second item, because what happens is people rely on pads. They don't have any forethought. They just sit in their box, wait on a pad if they don't have one, and if people around them don't have a pad, everyone's dead.
I actually think there's a worse repercussion of that too, on top of despite the fact, and firstly, fuck pads, fuck rifts.
I'm glad someone has the same opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of either of them. But the worst, although the fact that it makes rotation stupid in terms of will I wait for a pad, will I not? I actually think the worst part about pads is the fact that when you have a max zone, the players who have pads, who get zone as well, can hold you so much easier. They can just sit on top of that hill or that high ground that they've already got. They can spray, so it makes not having that pad even worse than if not. And then it's people are always talking about the RNG of having mobility against if you don't pull zone in a no zone rules, you're messed up. It's not going to happen, or not zone rules, sorry, in no zoom. But it's not true, because it's all these same things compound, because those people now have to rotate too, which means they're not going to be holding you as much as when you can move as well. Obviously, they're still going to hold you more, generally, because they got the luck, you didn't. Sometimes we play Fortnite. Let's be real.
Yeah, the thing that as I said, I think it creates lazy players, and I think that was what we saw. That adjustment period between season 1, or between season X, and then the first no movement meta in chapter 2 season 1. It took probably about 4 weeks for everyone to adjust to no movement, because no one knew how to play at a fundamental level. No one knew how to stay ahead. Just the basics of tarping. People didn't know because they didn't need to know in chapter 1. They had shadow bombs, they had rifts, they had shockwaves, they had everything. They had every kind of mobility.
Almost every mobility was still in it.
So the players who understood the fundamentals, like Chap, he played in the first, those were the guys who did really well. So now we're coming back to a meta where you can play a little bit lazy, and I hate it, because what it means is that people who are proactive, like you said, if I don't have a pad and I don't want to rely on people around me having one, the issue is that if I want to be okay, I'm going to be proactive here, I'm going to make my rotation, I get beamed in the back by everyone else who's going to sit and rely on a pad. So I'm forced to play what is technically wrong, or I guess you could call it lazy. You're forced to play lazy and sit and wait for a pad. And again, I live coach Radius on the weekend, and there was one game where he was set up. He was ready to do well, in beautiful zone, everything was good to go, and he didn't have a pad though. That was the one thing he didn't have. So we were okay, let's look for a recycler half. There's a decision you have to make. Do you sit in zone, tank 5-6 ticks, or do you risk getting pumped for 100 plus every time you go for a pad? Either way, it sucks.
Yes, I mean the element of reusing a pad is so ass, to the point that it'll never work in the finals, right? Or for FNCS I try not to call it, I have to say solos because I see so many people say the same thing for All Stars.
Yeah.
Is that, in solo cash cups, I have no real issue with it in comparison because realistically, in most lobbies, all those top fighters are the people who are most of the time winning most solo cash cups anyway, and they're gonna fight until they get a launch pad. Then they keep moving, so like they're benefited by that mobility instead. But when it comes to like a stacked 100 lobby, that's just not. It's not gonna happen. You're not gonna see like guys like, well, you might see Reason, Noah Riley, and all these other big names potentially try it, but with knowing who's dropping around them, all this kind of stuff, will they even have a pad at the same time? Will they waste it in the fight if they start losing it? And all these kind of things. Like, there's so much up and about trying to get it, but like I will put a counterpoint though, and it's not a good counterpoint, but I'm just gonna go against it because there's many minds out here, right? Because you come from more of a coaching mind, I come from more of a let's make content, let's make good stuff for the broadcast to mind. So we have both the analytical brains, but from different perspectives too. So because I'm not working with players one-to-one, I don't have as same as the issues as you do. There are two things that I find very interesting. Firstly, we had two basically no mobility metas in a row, which was relatively similar, we'll say. And as much as I love as high level of competitive as possible, sometimes just some wacky shit makes stuff interesting at the same time.
And that's actually exactly what I said before the season. I said I want them to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. Even if they put in something, like I said, even if it took a mech, like something like a mech, and then they go, oh, no, I get but something like it, and then they go, okay, shit, no, that's too much, let's take it out.
Yeah.
I'd much rather see them try and do, and that's actually what they ended up doing.
Yeah,
they put the UFOs in, and they realized, okay, this is not for comp, they took it out. But I'd rather see them go too far one way because I think you're right. As much as I come from an analytical standpoint, I also want longevity of the game. So we need interesting metas that are good to watch. Otherwise, there's no point in even bothering because the game's just going to slowly die, which is actually, unfortunately, what people are saying is happening, right? So bringing don't
listen to them.
But it's that general vibe you get around the community is like, that negativity. But I'm not a fan of the pad. I just think if there was something else, so it doesn't have to be shockwaves, but I'm thinking like bouncers. And if you want to nerf like the bouncer launch combo, or it can't be crash pads. Crash pad meta was stupid. Crash pad.
I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. It's going to be bouncers as well, but not only that, we're putting shield bubbles back in. We're putting shield bubbles and we're having bouncers. Launch pads then, because that negates a lot, not all the issues, because at the same time, like, you can still have these, does this guy have a pad? It makes those more stupid rotates happen for that fourth, fifth, and sixth zones in particular at that point. But at the same time, if you're not blessed with RNG, you have a shield bubble, boom, you can use it. Makes it much easier to reuse a pad if possible and not get held as much. I don't know why they've removed the shield bubble. Maybe, I don't know, did Microsoft come hit them with a big ban hammer of, you're taking this from Halo 3, give me that shield bubble back, baby? But it was so good. I think that's the best utility they've ever added. And it's only been in for one season.
Totally agree.
It's so sad.
And it was also one of the things that you could use quite creatively as well. Watching it being used with the hoverboards was really cool. You remember that in trios was really cool. I remember watching chat rotate with Sizz and Brush. That was the creativity of that was like, I mean, there's something going on here that's really interesting.
I very, very vividly remember when we sucked because it was Season X. Like, we were still so bad. I mean, I still suck, but I was even worse back then. It was 50-50 in just a random scrim we had. We were like completely stacked on height one side. The other team was stacked on height at the other side. They pull 50-50. We chuck a shield bubble on them, launch pad over, so they can't beam us out the sky. Took height instantly from them that way. And it's like, there's so many cool creative plays that you can make with it for offensive and defensive. The hoverboard was the best though, because rotating to like a max 50-50, all just like crouched in the shield.
And it had to be really slow to make sure it didn't fall off. It was great.
As soon as they got a little bit too fast, your back player starts getting beamed. You're like, slow down! And then the front player goes out the bubble, and it's great. It's teamwork at its finest.
No, but I think, especially in solos, I really like the idea of that, because you see those poor kids that are forced to use 1,500 of their builds and then go down, and something like that to just deter lobby focusing in solos. And honestly, I think most lobby focuses do come from poor decision making. Like, don't get me wrong, I think sometimes getting yourself caught up in congestion, going for a reload at the wrong time, getting yourself sandwiched unnecessarily or something like that, like just being unaware in general tends to get you focused. But if I still feel like there are some aspects of lobby focusing that can be random, and something like that can be really useful. And even in late game, I'm not too sure about how it'll work with late game, but I do really agree with you. I really think it's I don't know why it's not come back, and I think for a solo meta like this, it would have been great to see it back, or even in trios as well. Like seeing, again, that same idea. If you're coming in late and you're like, you get Stormfort, you're coming in late. We've got a shield bubble. We're going to be fine. It's quite nice. But yeah, no, I'm not a huge fan of the meta going into solos. Yep. I think we need a second item. I think bounces was it, and I think you're right. I think shield bubbles was it. So hopefully we can maybe see a couple adjustments. But speaking of more adjustments, what do you think about the map? Like, because we had those adjustments to the map, and now we've got more natural mobility. The spires are still in. We've got the launch pads. Nothing else has changed apart from those additional parts. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, for me, I am a fan of the game, right? And I've been a fan of the game since Chapter 2, Season 1. And one of the things... Oh, sorry, Season 3. And one of the things... Chapter 1, Season 3. We'll get it right eventually. A long time ago, right? And one of the things that everyone who's a fan of the game is when that new season drops... What's happened on the map? What's changed? What's the big things? Is this corner? Is there a new biome? All this kind of stuff. So when it comes to a new season and you see a map that's pretty much the same, it has a bit more utility here, there, and thereabouts, and you go, okay, it's not that great big change from like a looking at perspective, right? Then you look at it from a competitive perspective and you go, how many teams can actually drop on this map? How many solos can drop on this map? And you realize there's none. Like, it's so small in comparison. Yeah. Like in Chapter 2, Season 2, there was 18 named POIs on the map. This season has 14. So like we're missing 4. I can't do that much. Jesus, my math's off already. 4 huge named spots to land at. And it's like, there's not these cool routes that you can take and land at. And, obviously, me and you are both big fans of the 100% chest spawns as well. But, like, even that's not going to fix a majority of the issues on this map currently. And I've had a long rant about this. I have a lot of issues. And to be honest, for solos... If you look at any stacked solo map, there's always 1 or 2 areas that's just like, it's just a mess. Like in Season 3 for the solo FNCS, Fortia or Fortilla, however they actually pronounce it, had 5 or 6 people in EU particular land in there. I know it was like a big drop spot, but it's like, there's always a couple of POIs that are like a mess. Right now, when I look at this map, like everywhere's a mess.
Everywhere's a mess.
Like just literally everywhere.
And there's so much dead space on it. And I just mean that there's places where it's not quite a spot, and like it could be within maybe 2 or 3 more loot paths. It's just kind of like a couple of chests scattered within like a 14, 15 tile radius. It just doesn't work. Like I'm specifically thinking, when I say that, I'm specifically thinking of the area between Holly and Boney. Like what's there? What could be there?
There's there, and then not only that's been the same for so many seasons as well.
Why is there nothing?
There was 1 bunker chest. There you go.
And it was the IO guards and the heavy sniper at one point. Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah. So
in that one house. Yeah.
There's just been nothing there for so long, and it's dead space. Anyone who's landing at Boney, anyone who's landing at Holly, they are forced to find Surge basically north, south, or north, south, or west. You cannot find Surge east unless you're really forcing mid-map. It completely ruins the way that people distribute on the map because it's just this open, wide green field with a couple of rolling hills and some trees. It completely messes with the whole flow of the map, I find. I'm specifically talking about this one area because there are other areas like this on the map, and I think it ruins the whole flow of the map. I think there needs to be a POI there. But
I agree.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I think... Sorry, go on.
No, sorry. No, you finish your point.
I think there's too much dead space, which should have been fixed in the update. I think they need to continue adding more chests around the spot to make viable loot paths. But I am a fan of them adding more natural mobility. I'm not too sure how you feel about that. I think the launch pads added was quite cool. I think it creates interesting distributions. I'm not too sure if you've sort of played around with the map or the replay map with some of the stuff, and you've seen it's just like... launchpad, everyone goes like that. So it does some interesting stuff, and you have to adjust the way you think about mid-game a little bit. But I think I like the mobility, but I just think they need to do something. Again, it comes back to that whole idea, throw something at the wall, see what sticks. Put a POI, Starry Suburb, bring it back. Throw Lucky Landing in the middle there. Make it a block. I don't care, but there needs to be something that goes in these sort of dead spaces because there's not enough on the map. When I look at, like, I'm trying to find a drop spot for Radius because he's one of the guys that qualified from top 10.
Late.
And you know, so 90 players have already gone, this is my spot. I'm looking at going, who are we contesting? There is nothing.
The question.
And it's not like there's even a scrap path, like a complete scrap path. I can't even find anything. I'm looking there going, okay, you can contest this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, or this guy. What do you want? Who can you scare off? Who can you scare off in 4 days?
I mean, that is a fundamental issue. Like, obviously, not having enough POIs and the dead space kind of comes hand in hand, right? Because there's 3 areas in my mind that come to it. That one where you're talking about in particular on the west side of the map, because I did a whole breakdown of this on one of the EU broadcasts, I think for finals actually, because there was there's like a triangle of Storm Surge in that area where you go Sweaty to Holly into Boney at that point. You have 3, in EU in particular, it was like the 3 power teams who are there. And their entire Storm Surge strat depends upon who is around them, right? Sweaty teams usually either push north, sometimes into Coral, not that much recently, or west into the like Fancy View House over in that area. That team, and then you also look at the Holly team who does the same thing. So they push up, then they fight, but it's like you're looking at that time, you were looking at like Freemock's team going against like Tayson's team. They don't want to fight, like 2 top teams. Then you also have Noah Riley's team who is in Boney. You're like, all 3 of these teams, and this is like the triangle of bullshit here. All these teams can be pushing out in different ways, and it's like, what ended up happening is the majority of them push south into Weeping. So like, because there's nothing in the area, they have to move so far for zones, and because they're third part in a fight down in Weeping, then those teams are just wraps. It's like unlucky. That area sucks. Then you look at like the South Hills where Hunter's Haven used to be,
there needs
a
to be
barren wasteland.
There needs to be something there. That is that's the worst. That's just it's mind-boggling to me. There's not a POI there. It is so much dead space.
And like when they added Hunter's Haven, it was just bad. Like it was just a bad POI. So like, was it like 11 chests with like so many spots you couldn't build out? The materials there were bad. Yeah, it had a good position because it was on the hills, but like no team managed to make it work from my recollection. And then the other spot is south of Steamy and in between like Dirty in that area, kind of where Cami Split is in that kind of northern side of it. There's a viable paths there, but at the same time, it's like that has been dead space since the entire time. The entire time.
You remember what used to be there was like there was a little army base like even back, and they've got rid of that as well. You remember that? You could kind of go that mini junk and then the army base, and they got rid of the army base. Like it's getting rid of more loot. You know, that army base plus a couple of chests could be a loot path in itself. You know, that's taking away one person more's loot, and that's kind of the idea I'm getting at, is that it just feels like there's just nothing on the map. And I think the most egregious part about it is actually the mid map, like you were talking about. There's nothing there. And then there's an entire lake where you actually physically can't put any loot on south of that. So you've got south, and sometimes it has been north of it as well. So you've got this huge stretch of this big chunk of mountain, and then this huge chunk of lake where there's just nothing. It's just scattered chests. There's a spire there which you can get a little bit of loot in it. And if you combine it with the house there, you can probably get enough loot to make that a solo drop. But for the amount of space there, for that to be a single drop, it just makes no sense. Like, what they did with the Loot Lake made sense. That's 2-3 players drops. What they've done with this lake makes no sense. It's no one's drop. It's one person's drop. For the amount of space that covers, that needs to be 3, 4, 5 players drops. You know what I mean? So,
and like when you look at that, I'm like, that'll change. You go before trios, that'll change. But we have such a huge tournament coming in between that's going to be played on such a weird map. But
it's odd, eh?
I feel sympathy, to be honest, for the competitive team at Epic, because you'll know as well as I do that they're not the same team. So like realistically, like the competitive team are working with whatever they're given, and like this is why when I saw a lot, because this season in particular, a lot of people have been talking about the map changes, and when I saw that, I was like, although these are cool questions to be asking, like you're reaching pretty far because you're not going to the connections that some of the people in the community will have, right? No, I don't think many people from the, we'll say, casual side of Epic will probably see most of the competitive tweets coming out about like, make the map bigger, blah blah blah. They're focused on the casual side, and you know, from all the seasons we've seen so far, it just seems like the competitive team are molding into whatever they have to work with map wise,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And yes, they've managed to like align the tournament so that there's not major map changes. Maybe apart from today, we'll see about Sweaty Sands disappearing.
Yeah.
But you know, they seem to like fit in with that rather than the other way around. So like, although I want lots of map changes, to be honest, at the minute, I think like the biggest thing for me is probably just reducing player count, in all honesty, because
Yeah.
in particular, I don't want that. I want a full 100 or 99 in
Yeah, no, I
trios.
agree. Yeah.
But when you look, I've been thinking a lot about a little bit of a diversion off of solos, but trios generally. And like, I've been talking 4 or 5, how many seasons now? Every season of trios, actually, sorry, about contested versus uncontested drops. But I'm so bored of talking, and I swear everyone's bored of hearing this. But it's like the fundamental issue is they've nowhere to go. Like when you look at last season in EU, Hinjan and Shabix being contested. Okay, say they were losing and they wanted to dip. Where do they go? Where do they go on the map?
They go and fight someone else.
Yeah, and then it's like they've been chosen essentially by another team, and I'm not really talking bad on High Chris' team because that is also their drop spot too. But they were chosen, so now they're not uncontested. They're just that's it. Now they don't have a contested drop. They don't win.
Unlucky.
And it's like if there's less teams or more map, which fingers crossed, you know that boring conversation we don't have, and maybe we can actually start talking about early game strategies rather than just looking at like who's fighting.
Yeah, well, imagine a 75 player lobby. 75. Good. You know, so you completely negate second zone surge. 5 people have to go down, that's pretty viable. Snipes here and there, you know, that might work. And you've got guaranteed loot for everyone. You take 8 teams out of the lobby, or if you're playing solos, you're taking 25 players out of the lobby. So that might be something to explore. But again, I just never see it happening. Unfortunately, I think you know, in an ideal world, I think we would have 75 player lobbies because servers would be better off spawn if you are contested, blah, blah, blah. But especially for stackers, I think, you know, stacked solos and I think for cash cups, keeping 100 is probably, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Arena,
for closed lobbies, I think maybe reducing player count or going back to a bigger map just makes more sense. But yeah, no, slight diversion there, but it's I think it's a really good conversation to have because it's not exactly something that we've only just brought up. Like you said, it's been happening for season after season now, where it's like, okay, who's the team that's close to favorites that we're ruling out this season because they're contested, you know? And like it's like 1+ team a season.
Yeah. And that is not a competitive discussion to have.
It's not.
That's the most uncompetitive thing you could possibly put in. Which of the best teams are we never gonna talk as good, like put in the predictions to do well because someone else is fighting the most one? And like that for me has been a huge issue. And I'm trying to figure out ways to not talk about this, but it's so like in terms of like on broadcast and trying to actually bring good analysis to this. But but realistically, it's like it's just so pertinent.
Too influential on what's happening. You know, Hen, Chapix, and Janice were probably. I think I chose them to go back to back, and for an EU team, that's unbelievable. To have that much faith,
they would have won as well.
To have that much faith in an EU team to go back to back is unreal. It goes to show how talented they were, but simply because, like you said, they were. And again, like you said, no hate to High Chris's team. That was their drop all season, but I mean. It's the same for them. Where do they go? They go contest somewhere they're not familiar with. They go contest a top 33 team in EU on a drop they're not familiar with.
Yep. I would say, to be honest, Henjaz and Champix after, this is a definite divergent now, but Henjaz and Champix after day one were second while being contested, and then
that's unreal.
Dropped down like 7th or 8th or something. And High Chris's team, you know, should they have done? They were 32nd after day one. They ended in 32nd after day 2. Probably just disengaged. Like realistically, that second day. That second day was about egos at that point. But anyway, that's not the main point of the
No, but
conversation.
I totally get what you're saying. Either way, it sucks. And I think it is an important conversation to have going into any stacker games. But we were having a little chat about before we got the cameras rolling about the prize pool. Now we have seen complaints about the prize pool and I know you got the tabs up, so I'm going to let you read it out.
The tabs.
But the prize pool for this is unbelievable. And, people have been crying out. I think you said this beforehand. People have been crying out for Season X prize pools, and they've basically got it in this tournament. What do you think about them dropping a lot of money into something like this?
I'm multifaceted by it because, firstly, it's really cool that there's a mid-year tournament
Yeah.
that there's such a huge prize pool in, because like it also gives more incentive in the first two FNCSs, right? I don't know what the plans are in the future. We also know there's an end-of-year tournament. We know nothing
Cool.
about it so far. They said that in like the initial blog in the year,
Right,
where
yeah.
there's like
I forgot
four
all about that.
FNCS. I know, I remembered vividly because I was doing the maths. I think it's also a 3 million, or is it a 5 million prize pool? I think it's
Whoa.
actually more prize pool because
Wow.
there's been four FNCSs with 3 mil prize pool each. This one, another 3 mil, so we're up to 15, 5 mil left, unless they're counting cash
Yep.
cup money in that
Yeah,
5 mil. I don't actually know. But anyway, either way, it's going to be cool. So I think it's really cool because it incentivizes that top 15 a little bit more in
Yep.
the actual
Definitely.
FNCS, if that's like a staple, which is really good because you're stopping some teams kind of griefing who are around that area, who are not, just making dumb plays. To be honest, we haven't really seen that too much, in particular EU, potentially maybe in OCE, you see lower down teams grief a lot more than in the larger regions. But I think to put like a huge prize pool on it is sick, because we all want the big World Cup. We all want it.
Sorry,
We
just
know
just
it's not
before you go
happening
on
this
there,
year.
what can you read me
Yeah.
the prize pool again? So
I
what is
will.
it?
I will.
Okay, sorry.
So
Sorry, go on.
I'll take
Yeah.
the three main regions that we're interested in here: EU, and then we'll go NA East and OCE.
Yeah.
For first in EU, $150,000. So the invitational was 120,000. So like this is 30K more. Second is 120. Third is 100K, and then it's like 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30. If you come
Unbelievable.
10th, you make $25,000 for coming 10th. 11 through 15, it's all 15K. It's crazy. If you even make it to 76th, like 76th till 100th, still 2K. So everyone here is
Far
making at
out.
least 2K for
That's
EU.
crazy.
There's also, I think, one of the coolest things is most elims in a match you manage to get $1,020 as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'd rather have the victory royale maybe
Yeah, me
be
too.
more
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
There was an interesting conversation I actually had with Lou from Wave, where he said like he'd probably say it's better to have it in the eliminations rather than in the victory royale, because it takes away a bit from like the champion winning. But I kind of disagree with that, because most of the time if the champion dies and someone else wins, no one really cares about it that much. But I think if they win, they get the prize pool, at least like in the moment. There's like, I won $1,000 or something like that. But anyway, so that's really cool. So
That's unreal.
that's an insane prize
Yeah.
pool. NA East is $75,000 for first, so it's basically just
Halved.
50%.
Yeah. Okay.
It's half of
Yep.
EU. NA West 35, Brazil 35,
So halved as
Asia
well.
20. Yeah,
Yeah, and we're the
Middle
same,
East
so
20,
20.
and then you're 20 as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, everyone that's made it is getting $200
Yeah.
already, which is
And,
cool, which is really good.
I quite like how it's rewarding players for continuing to play. And I know it's like
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to be handing out money, but there's top players who maybe not were in the top, maybe not quite making what they wanted to. This is like okay, here's a chance to really make some cash. I think it's unbelievable that it is done over 6 games though, and I think this is a huge. I think it's a huge issue. I really do. I'm not I've been pretty vocal about it in the competitive chord. I really don't like how it's only 6 games. I think there needs to be 12, especially in solos. The less teammates you have, the more RNG it is. It's just that simple. And again, like we're talking about, you might just get focused one game, and it's 6 games. It's 1 of 6 down the toilet. And again, I don't want to keep on bringing up the fact that I live Coach Radius, but it's a perfect example of
Flexing on us.
No, but it's a perfect example
I get it.
of a couple of good games can actually put you up, but if you've got a couple of bad games there's also just no chance of you winning if the best players are doing well. And over 12 games, I think it's important to allow people to have 1 or 2 bad games, because in solos it is bound to happen. And what you don't
Especially when
want
you're this
is
contested.
to punish people for having 3 bad games straight away. I think it's important to allow, because it's about that regression to the mean. And if there's so much variance across a solos tournament, you need to allow it to come back to to the best players at the top, and then it sort of grades its way down. And you might have a couple upsets here and there, but I think it's really important to go a long time, 12 games, and they have the whole weekend to do it anyway. Like that's what I'm the most confused about, because isn't the skills challenge beforehand?
So no, so skills challenges is on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So there's ones
Yeah.
across like all days. Does this have Tuesday? What days are there? Tuesday? No,
Oh,
so
okay.
those days. But there's nothing. It's on Saturday is the 6 games,
Yeah. So what's on
and there's
Sunday?
nothing on Sunday. So my guess, event map change on Sunday.
Well, please. I mean,
Guessing,
if that's what
guessing.
we're getting, I'm happy. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
If that's what we did, but if it's actually nothing and they've only given us 6 games for a solo tournament with that kind of money on the line, I'm not going to say I'm going to be pissed off, because I really like the fact that they've gone for something cool like this. They've changed the pace up, but I think they've kind of got to use their heads here. Where like, okay, this is solos. There's a lot more RNG. We need to put a few games in behind this. Otherwise, we actually not, you know, the cream isn't going to rise to the top of the
yeah.
crop. We're just not going to see, like, there's too much RNG there. We're going to see a couple of top players down the bottom. We're going to see a couple of random players near the top, and it's not going to be the kind of leaderboards we're expecting. So I'm actually expecting quite a few upsets this weekend. I don't think the players that we're expecting to see up top will be up top. I don't think 6 games is enough to really shake out the variance. Of course, you know, we might see that across some regions, but I think there will I reckon, how many regions are there?
7.
7. Across all regions, I reckon we're going to see 5 champions that you wouldn't expect to be up top. 5 of them.
That's bold.
Yep.
I mean, I think you're probably right. Like the trying to what non-variability, unvariability. I don't know.
Yep.
My English is clearly lacking too. is way too much, because like the same thing realistically happened in season 3 as well, because solo FNCS was only 6 games as well, and if you and like in comparison to the invitational, which was 12, so I'm not really sure why they went from 12 to 6. Then they've done 12 games on the other ones, and then back to 6 here. Really kind of confuses me.
Yeah, me too.
My guess. Here's my guess. Because I've been thinking about. I keep trying to want to talk about World Cup stuff. Imagine there's a World Cup next year, right? We put a ton of focus a year into solos, trios. Realistically, World Cup would be trios if it was there, right?
Yeah.
But you can't not have solos.
Yes,
Because
I
solos
agree.
was such a good attraction for it.
Yeah.
So potentially, or maybe are they trying to patent us for a 6-game solos as part of that? Now that sounds like I'm taking the crazy hat off.
Yeah,
putting it on
that
here.
really is pushing it, I think. But no,
Tinfoil
I
hats on,
appreciate
but-
I appreciate the thought process, because
Yeah,
man, if they really
the
are
thought
gearing up for
process
that,
there.
that's quite nice. But yeah,
Yeah.
if it's for an event, if it is, you know, thinking long term, okay, let's get them ready for 6 games. I got no complaints, and I'm the kind of person where like
definitely.
I just need to hear the comms on it. Like I
Yeah.
feel like
Oh,
we
yeah.
we never get quite enough information. I'd like to know why it's 6 games. Do they have something planned for Sunday? Do they think that 6 games is enough? And do they need to be told why 6 games isn't enough? But
I think they're aware that.
okay.
Like I've not had a conversation, so not trying to suggest
no,
that I have
no.
by any means. I know you know that. I'm just trying to support anyone who listens to this, and they're like,
gotcha.
"Who knows why it's 6 games?" No, like realistically, they clearly know it should be 12 games for general FNCS, because every other one has been 12 games
Yeah, I
since,
guess
like
that's a
for
good
the
point.
trios and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And most of the time, although a lot of people give Epic slack for a lot of stuff, like they are relatively switched on the majority of issues. There are
No, I
some
agree.
things they do that definitely aren't. So like they know. I guarantee the majority of the competitive team know that it probably would be better for 12. My thought process potentially is that they're not looking at it as like a full FNCS. They want to take maybe the focus away from the solo tournament a little bit, and also put it on the skills challenges that are there coming out through the week. I know most people care about the solo tournament, but like they probably want to make it like a full thing, right?
Yeah.
One whole
Like a
big
festival, you know?
4-day event. Yeah, it's an all-stars. This is the cool stuff you want to see. You know, everyone's here for that bit at the end, but there's still all this cool other stuff. So maybe that's why they don't want to make it a 2-day event.
No, that's actually a
I
really
wish
good
it
point.
was though. Yeah.
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 And so speaking of my bold prediction, I think we're going to see a bunch of players who we don't expect up the top. Who are some of your players to look for? Now, I know you're very keyed in on EU. I know you're very keyed in on NA East. I'm very
not
kind
this
of.
season, yeah.
Well, just tell me some of the players who you're really looking out for, because I'm relatively, not that I'm clueless, but you know, with more of my focus being on OCE because of my power contract, I tend to just focus OCE. But for solos, I do a little bit of watching around. Tell me who you're looking at and why. Start with EU. Start with
in
EU.
EU. Yeah, in EU, like there could be an infinite list of people. In
agreed.
all honesty, like last season when I was looking at trios, I had the same issue where I was like, there could be 10, 15 teams who could win this season. So this season, I mean, you've got to pick people who have performed in these kind of situations before. If I was going to pick anyone, not necessarily to win, but to be top 5, Savage is the first person I'm going for. Like,
Me too.
if I want like the safest pick possible, I did a full breakdown video on why I think Savage is like the best solo player in the EU.
Ever.
He's not necessarily won as many, but yeah, I think he's like, if I'm going top 5, I think he's going to be in there first.
Yeah, no, I agree. He would be my. See, I'm the exact same as you. I will not be picking anyone to place first because, like I said, six game. There is no one who I'm confident in that will pick first. But for EU, 100% I agree. Savage would be. For him. I'm the most confident that he would be top 5 out of anyone in any region, apart from Muzz and OCE. Apart from Muzz and OCE, I think I'm confident that he'll be top 5. In there, those two players are the only ones that I am that confident they'll be up there. That I could say that's my prediction across those. Every single other region, I do not have a single player that I'm like, I'm confident this person can top 5 because of 6 games.
Yeah, so like, I mean, that's the issue, to be honest with you, and especially when I look at the drop map, he's in the hills near. I always forget the house name. The houses near Steamy, triple houses near Steamy. He's only contested by one person there, so he's like. It's not Fancy View House. It's
I get the one you
mean. Starts P, but you know what I mean. Yeah, anyway, so he's landed there. He's used to that kind of area of the map. He looks familiar, not super conned. He's one of the, and obviously, like, let's be real, one of the most consistent solo players
of all time,
out of any region ever. Yeah. So easiest pick to be top 5. Just to like bat off names because there's so many. Like Janice, easy pick. Like. Huge, obviously invitational winner, did extremely well in the solo FNCS as well, has performed in trio FNCS, is clearly still on fire for these like stack level tournaments, and his solo play will still come forward. A little bit worried now the Harpoon's not in the game.
Yeah.
Because he's always been like a big solo Harpoon player generally. Yeah. And same with the 6-game format, because his thing is super consistency.
Exactly, yeah.
Generally. And I think with 6-game format, it'll be like if you lose one game, he's out. And I think basically the person who's going to win is going to have a first and top 3, and that's it. Yeah. I think, honestly, first, maybe like one big game, a top 3, and a top 10. That's my prediction for someone who will win. Yeah. So Tayson's obviously a big pick because he is the person who did exactly that in solo FNCS. He had a 12 elim win, which is probably still, I think people probably underestimate how incredibly mechanical that win was. It's one of the, I have vivid memories of him absolutely crank shitting on the second last kid. It was unreal. Like, he fully just went free build mode on like the second last guy, picked up the elim. It is actually like a sight to watch for that game. That was like such a impactful game anyway. So he has that ability, and like, let's be real, Tayson's the GOAT when it comes to EU right now. Is, then you just got to go like Hen. You got Chapix,
list them off,
like,
right? That's the scary
exactly.
thing.
It's like you can keep going through like infinite amount of people. Reason, Noah Riley, maybe not so much Vidal. I'm not sure how much he's been performing in solos like as of recently, because I know he's always been playing a ton, I think, but he's up there too. You could literally just list any other EU player. They're probably like the tops that I would put up there. That have all performed in solos, all performed in trios too, all performed pretty much in solo cash cups, which is one of the only insights we've had so far into how these players are playing. Like, realistically, I look, if they're shitting on people in solo cash cups, winning a ton, if they're doing well in the stack tournaments and trios, I'm like, you can put 2 and 2 together, say they're probably going to play well in like a stacked solo tournament as well.
So my second pick, if I was EU, would actually be Resin.
Yeah.
And again, it's for that exact reason you just said. And I was going to go on a little tangent about that myself. About they need a pop off game. You need to have first and then a couple of tenths. And he's to me he's not the kind of guy who plays 6 games for consistency. He's not an Arkham. He's not an Arkham centered. Like you said, a Janus. He doesn't rely on Harpoon. He relies on getting kills. So I like when I'm thinking of these guys who I'm picking, I'm thinking of anyone who can get kills. I'm thinking of anyone who's not relying on a Harpoon, and that to me that spells Resin's name. Like, that is just someone.
Yeah, it does.
It's just he can get in a box. He's confident. He's going to shit on anyone. That's his mentality. And if he needs to get in a box to get his refresh, that's what he's going to do. So. I see him having 1 or 2 pop-off games and winning. I can literally see that, but you just never know. And when you got someone like, Savage, and he just run through the whole list of people you've got, and it's like, will he whiff 1 game? Will he whiff 2 games? Getting in. So it's just, you never know with 6 games.
Nope.
And if it was 12, I think my idea would shift. I think I'd probably go towards, like you said, like Janice or Hen or one of those guys who's sort of shown that they're very consistent. But I think more with a 6-game format and you've got to kind of have one of those big games, I'd put my money on Resin to be that guy who can come up and really show that he's good to go. Other regions, I think one person who hasn't got enough credit for how consistent he's been in any solos has been Vert in NA West. Now, I'm going to put it out there. I don't know much about the guy. I've never really watched his streams. I've never really watched his videos. But this guy, he went and he qualified for UEFA on NA East, and he came like top 10. Did it on West. I think he came second, or it was like a top 5 finish. And you go back and look at his solos. He won solo FNCS.
Season 3. Yeah.
He did. I can't remember what he did in Invitational, but I'm fairly certain he did pretty damn decent in that as well. He's shown that he's very consistent across stack solos. He would be the guy that I'll be looking out for as like not necessarily a wild card, but a guy who's like he's done it across every stacked solo in Chapter 2. He's someone who, you could think about putting out, and obviously there's like, Arkram, he'd be in the next choice, but again, he falls in that category of someone who would rely more probably on the harpoon and the consistency, whereas I feel like Vert might be that guy who could have, again, I don't really know much about his gameplay, but I just can't turn away from the fact that he's been so consistent.
Vert, I watched, so I heard of Vert from Season 3 when he won that region. Never had heard of him before that point. And his gameplay, the only thing I've watched from him so far was a Twitter clip that he put up. He's a controller player, and he is off the wazoo cracked, like unreal. We're talking top tier shit, right?
Yeah.
So he is very, very impressive to watch. I hadn't actually followed him after that in terms of like his placements because I don't follow West that much, but. Like that's a very good point. He was 100% one to go up there, and same with like to be honest, with any tournament in any West, you have to just look at Arkram as. That's. I mean, he's one of my favorite players generally. Right? Just the gold standard. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the drop map looks like for that region. Yeah, no, but starting with Vert, that's actually an interesting point because you're trying to diverge into any East for a bit. I have no clue because historically solos on any East has been dominated by controller players. Like the FNCS Invitational, Furious, solo FNCS was Coop. Do I see either of those players winning right now? I don't see any of those at all. I don't think they're up at the standard to win a tournament like that.
Coop didn't qual.
Well, that's exactly why. So there you go. I knew that clearly.
Well, I mean, Furious is in there, but not to say it's just he's not at the same level as he was back then. He was winning all sorts back
pre-nerf.
then. And so again, like my first thought goes Stretch. But he was pretty reliant on consistency. He doesn't usually have huge pop-offs, but I can see you talked about having that win. I could see him putting like a second, a fourth, and a ninth together, and then there you go, he's won. He's that kind of player. And so I don't really have a prediction for NA East. I don't have a prediction really for anything. But I just wanted to maybe throw out some names that you thought you thought was interesting. I think Skittles is a guy to look out for. He's been really, really consistent recently, and he's shown he's got pop-off ability. But man, controller players have been, like you said, it's been unbelievable how dominant controller players have been in solo stacked every time they've come up. So it's going to come down to whether or not some controller player, some KBM player can put it together on the day, really. It's one day, 6 games. What can they do?
Yeah. And the thing is, not even just stacked tournaments, because, you got to think all the way back to the dominance of unknown in the solo cash cups beforehand. It's that region for solos generally has just been run by controller players in the past. Yeah. And, who is there? I'm trying to think, is there a controller player on NA East who's, on top? Not really. My memory's really bad.
I'm trying to think of all the top trios. Not really coming to mind with anything at the moment.
I'm sure someone will be like,
yeah,
you
no,
forgot
there's
this player.
But I guess what the point is that there's not that real standout. It's not there's not the Coop, there's not the the Furious or the Illust or those guys that were really standouts at the time that you're like, holy shit, these guys are in contention for actually some of the best players in the game at the moment. I think
It wasn't that in trios last season either.
No, and
when you looked at all the trios, you're like,
and a lot of those guys actually struggle to find.
Miro, there you go. Sorry, Dane Miro.
Oh, that's a bad oversight, actually. Oh, that's really bad. Oh no, that's really bad.
We love you, boys. Trust me. I told you we'd forget about someone.
I got to say,
they could win.
I got to say, Miro could win. Miro really could win. That guy, and Day's got the pop off potential. You talk about pop off potential. That guy speaks that. I don't think. This is not a shot at him. I don't think he's as smart as Miro. When you listen to Reverse and Miro's comms, it's a lot of them going back and forth, and Day's pretty silent. I don't know if he absorbs it and he's quietly smart.
Yeah, it could be his role.
That's and sometimes you just need a guy who's going to sit there, shut up, and get kills, which is
he does it. That's what he does. Yeah.
That's a really poor way to put it, but you understand what I mean. But he's a guy who can really have that pop off, and when again it comes back to that 6-game format. Can you have that pop off game a couple of times? Miro, obviously, we know he's got the potential to do that every day of the week.
Pop off. His clutch last season was
So there's all sorts. But look, moving over to OCE, I said Muzz was probably my only pick to be who I'd be super confident top 5ing. Obviously, I'm really confident in Jinx and Worthy. I think those two are... I mean, obviously, I work with them in Power, but even if I wasn't working with them, those would be the other choices that I'd have. Luda's a good guy to look out for. But again, like when I think of Jinx and Worthy, I think of them as consistency players. I don't think of them as pop-off players, and that's not exactly what this tournament looks like. Radius is a pop-off player, but I can't even find the guy a drop at the moment, so we've got to find who we can kick out of some drops. So, and Alec is contested at the moment, so we've got to see if we can get rid of that guy. So you can't. Trying to think of other. Yes, so I said Luda. There's some other good solo players, but when it comes down to it, I think our region is the most up in the air. Potentially Repulse. He's another guy with real pop off potential. You might see him get a 10, 12 kill game at some point, but. Again, more comes down to the fact that it's a 6-game format, and you just never know what's going to happen on the day. Think about this is a classic. Think about, and I hate to do it to the guy because I always take the piss out of him.
You're about to hit world. You're gonna hit the World Cup duos.
No, I'm not. I'm actually gonna hit. Oh no, that's a really good point though. Yeah, World Cup duos. But I'm gonna hit Vortex from OC. This is really really mean. But he's 2 seasons in a row he choked. So in solos. It was invitationals. After day 1 in first and quite handily, and I think by day 2 he was in 7th, and then in trios in the first season of trios they were I think they might have been first after day 1 as well, and then they came 32nd on day 2 uncon from Craggy when it had rifts, or it might have been like 27th or something, but they got 4 points in one day, but it comes. Can they have that day? Can someone have that day where they finish up top after 6 games, and they might be a team who has the potential to get 4 points in 6 games, or there might be a player who has the potential to get 4 points in 6 games, but they put it together on that one day. So I think
that's symbolic.
I think we can pretty much wrap it up, unless you have any surprise players that you aren't happy that aren't in there.
No,
I agree.
I know everyone's
thinking
Mongrel and Nitro haven't qualified. You know what? They haven't been good enough to qualify. I wish we'd seen the standard of gameplay from them that we're used to seeing, but they're not playing that way. And this is my God. Sometimes one of the reasons I hate streaming in the old days, because especially when you're in EU Analyst, where as soon as something happens, it's where's Mongrel? Yeah. Nitro's not qualified. Yesterday, do you know that Noah's been banned? I was like, yes, I've put it in my fucking title. I'm very familiar that he's been banned, so I'm asking me the question.
Yeah.
No, those guys, look, realistically, top 15, 2 seasons in FNCS finals is extremely doable for any top player. any top player playing to a good standard. They've then had the opportunity to come top 10 in a format which is excluding the 90th essentially best players. Not necessarily because some haven't made it during the trios, but let's just say in every region, the 90 best players aren't in that. If you can't come top 10 in that, how are you going to come top 10 in like the finals as well? So it's...
The way that I described it is someone made a comment about it on Twitter, and I said, if you cannot, like, your mechanics might be the greatest, but if you don't have the game sense to keep up with the meta at just the slight and the absolute slightest with the amount of talent those two have, I'm sorry, but you know, like this is going to sound really bad, but at the moment they may as well be creative warriors. That's how I see it. Like, of course, they've got the experience and they know how to put it together, or they knew how to put it together. And all they need to do is just, they don't need a coach, but they just need to sit down. They need to understand how to play the game now, not play it like how they did back in the day. They've just got to sit down and they've got to basically not necessarily relearn, but they've got to learn how to play the game again. And with the amount of mechanical talent, the amount of obviously natural aim talent they have, they would be back on top very quickly. But
very, very quickly.
Very, very quickly.
I would say in a season.
Oh, easily.
In a season.
Absolutely.
If they don't play together.
Yes. So all it will take will be a good IGL, a good coach, a good, or just applying themselves. But I just don't think they care enough. I don't know if it's because they made the money. I don't know if it's because they can't be bothered. I don't know if it's because they hate the game. But if you're not at that level, which they have proven they are not, they don't deserve to be in the contention for it.
In an All-Stars.
No.
I agree. It's sad to see because like when you think of the phrase All-Star, and most people will think these top names, right?
Yeah.
But realistically, they're not the names who are performing right now. Yeah. I think that when you look at the two gameplay, I'd actually separate them a little bit because I see very, very different playstyle, not necessarily playstyle, but understanding of the game for Mongrel than I do for Metro. Like, even watching back when their last season playing with Milan, like, Mongrel clearly put a ton of effort into understanding the game, positions, not just taking stupid fights all this time. Like, when we watch back, they had made, like, a huge impact, and he'd made a lot of improvements by himself because I think not qualifying the season before was like a real kick in the balls, basically. So he'd made that change. Mitro was not. I saw zero differences from him at all, where he was like running around with a sniper out. People are like, stop. I was like the bow. He was like, stop. Mongrel literally said, stop bowing this team. Stop bowing this team. We need to rotate. Mitro standing in the open, just firing away at him, going for it. And then he gets headshot bowed. He gets finished straight away. And it's like, the call was there. He didn't respect the call. He wasn't listening to it. There was another time, I just remember watching back through the games, and he was like, oh, we need Joe carry med kits. He's like, I've got P90. He's like, just how you like take a fucking med kit. And then later on in the game, it comes to a point no one has any white heels in the team. They're all like, they've been fireflied or stunk bomb. I can't remember what was in the season at the time. So they're all low on white heels. Same thing. Mitro's sitting like, oh, now I wish he had that bloody med kit, right? And it's that kind of thing where it's like, I saw a lot of the growth in Mongrel last season. Cool. Not so much from Mitro. And watching because I obviously look back to I was watching and doing the stuff on the qualifiers. Obviously they're both trying to qual. Mongrel was playing pretty good, not like to the standard that you would think go up. He slept in. He fell asleep between the two thingies, missed a lot of the other one, nearly came back and just missed qual. I think he probably could have made a top 10, to be honest with you. I actually think Mongrel probably could have made a top 10 because he's done well in a third-party tournament as well. I think he came like top 10 in some third-party tournament. Mitro, on the other hand, made it to round 4. I came like 90th, just flopped super hard. And I was like, that doesn't surprise me,
I wasn't sure if that was him because I just had a quick look at the leaderboards and I was like, there's a Liquid Mitro here that looks like his IGN, but I didn't know if it was him. I assumed it was. Yeah. But yeah, no, it didn't surprise me. I think if he gets like essentially what you said, if he gets to a stacked lobby scenario, he's gonna essentially be completely not clueless. He's not going to have any idea where to find Surge from. His rotations, I'm not too sure he'd have too much of an idea. Simply, but like you said, if you've seen that growth from Mongrel, you'd hope that you could see it from him because he's got such a large following. If I'm doing viewer videos, people know his montages off by heart. They're like, oh, go watch Metro 17. And he's released like 24 of them. And it's like, how the hell do you know that 17's that good? Or you know what I mean? Yeah. So the fact that he's got that kind of impact and has kind of let it slip like this is not necessarily disappointed. I don't want to sound like I'm like reprimanding him, but it would
Yeah,
be really cool to see him back on top, because I think you'd see a
I
kind of
agree.
resurgence, and people would be really excited to, there'll be a good storyline. So hopefully
Hmm.
you can sort of pull it together. But now if you don't have much more to say, oh sorry, yeah, go on if you're going to say something.
I was about to say those cracks started to form a long time ago. That's the
Yeah,
problem, though.
yeah,
Like
that's
when
the
you
thing.
look back in the duos in chapter two, season two, like those cracks were forming then. And
Yeah,
in squads, you get away with it a bit more with the full team of
yeah,
just
full team, yeah.
shitting on everyone. But like
Yeah.
early on, you could see those cracks starting to form, which is a shame. It's a shame to see. But no, that was all. Just
Yeah, no,
harping on.
it's a good one. But I really appreciate you coming on here, mate.
No
We'll see
problem, buddy.
we'll see what your schedule's like. It's a good to have a little chat, because I get to hear, I kind of sit in my own thoughts a lot of the time, so it's good to hear what other people
Mhm.
think. I just assume I'm right all the
Same.
time. It's so,
I mean,
but no,
if I agree with you, you are. There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. But no, good to have you on, guys. If you don't
Thank
already
you.
follow Reisshub, make sure you do. We'll link his Twitter, his YouTube, everything else that he has on screen now. So make sure you go follow him. But yeah, thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Catch you later.
Peace.